Your life does not change when your circumstances change. It changes when your thinking changes. The moment your mindset shifts, the world that once looked like a prison can begin to look like possibility. This is the story of a beggar who owned nothing except the one thing that eventually changed everything. In a busy town that could have existed in any corner of the world, near a marketplace filled with noise and movement, there sat a beggar known only as Elias. No one knew where he came from. Some said he had always been there. Others claimed he once had a family, a trade, maybe even a home. But time had erased those details. All that remained was a thin man with tired eyes, sitting on the same worn-out wooden box beside the same dusty road, day after day. Elias woke up each morning before the sun fully rose. He folded his old blanket neatly, washed his face at a public tap, and returned to his spot. He would place a small metal bowl in front of him and lower his head slightly, not in respect, but in resignation. "Spare a coin," he would whisper as people passed. Most ignored him. Some dropped a coin without looking at him. A few looked at him with pity, and a handful looked at him with quiet judgment. Years passed this way. Elias believed three things about himself. First, I am unlucky. Second, the world is unfair. Third, nothing will ever change. These beliefs became the walls of his invisible prison. One afternoon, a traveler stopped in front of him. Unlike others, the traveler did not immediately drop a coin. Instead, he looked directly at Elias. "Why do you sit here every day?" The traveler asked. Elias sighed. "Because this is my life." "Who told you that?" the traveler asked calmly. Elias frowned. "No one had to." "Look at me." The traveler's eyes moved briefly to the wooden box Elias was sitting on. "How long have you been sitting there?" he asked. "Years," Elias replied. "It's just an old box. I found it by the roadside. Have you ever looked inside it?" Elias laughed bitterly. "Why would I? There's nothing inside." "It's just a box." The traveler smiled faintly. "Are you sure?" Something about the question unsettled Elias, but pride stopped him from checking. He shrugged. "It doesn't matter," he said. The traveler reached into his bag and took out a small mirror. He handed it to Elias. "Look," he said. Elias hesitated, then held the mirror up. He saw his unshaven face, tired eyes, worn clothes. "What do you see?" the traveler asked. "A beggar," Elias replied. The traveler shook his head gently. "I see a man who believes he is a beggar." The words lingered long after the traveler walked away. That night, Elias could not sleep properly. The sentence echoed in his mind. "I see a man who believes he is a beggar." The next morning, before the marketplace became busy, Elias did something he had not done in years. He stood up. He looked at the wooden box beneath him. For a moment, he almost laughed at himself. "This is foolish," he muttered. But curiosity, small and fragile, pushed him forward. He dragged the box slightly and noticed it was heavier than he had expected. His heart began to beat faster. With trembling hands, he forced the lid open. Inside, covered in dust and cloth, were small bars of gold. Elias froze. His breath shortened. His hands shook. For years he had been sitting on a box filled with wealth, unaware of it. Tears filled his eyes. But something even more powerful happened in that moment. He realized the box had never been his real prison. His mindset had been, he had assumed it was empty. He had never checked. He had believed there was nothing inside, and so he never looked. The gold was real. But the true treasure was the understanding that followed. "I've been living as a beggar because I believed I was one," he whispered. Now here is where the story becomes deeper. Many would think this is the moment Elias became rich and left the streets behind. But that is not what changed his life first. For several days, Elias did not touch the gold. He hid it carefully and continued to sit at his usual spot, not to beg, but to observe. He watched people rushing by complaining about small problems, fighting over prices, cursing bad weather. He saw something he had never noticed before. Many of them were also sitting on invisible boxes of gold, skills, talents, opportunities, relationships, but they never looked inside. They too believed limiting stories about themselves. "I'm not smart enough. I am too old. I am too poor. I am not lucky." Elias realized something profound. Poverty of money is difficult. But poverty of mindset is worse. Finally, he used a portion of the gold not to buy luxury, but to buy clean clothes and rent a small room. He learned to read properly. He asked questions. He worked small jobs, not because he needed to beg anymore, but because he wanted to grow. People were shocked. "The beggar has changed," they whispered. But Elias knew the truth. He had not changed because he found gold. He found gold because he changed. His posture shifted. His voice became steady. He stopped lowering his head. When he spoke with clarity. Years later, Elias became known not as the beggar of the marketplace, but as a wise teacher who spoke about mindset. People would gather around him, asking how he transformed his life so suddenly. He would tell them about the box. But then he would say something unexpected: "The gold did not make me rich. It only revealed what was already possible." The real treasure was the moment I questioned my belief. One day, a young boy asked him, "What if there is no gold in my box?" Elias smiled. "There is always something, maybe not gold, maybe talent, maybe courage, maybe the ability to learn. But you will never know until you open it." Over time, his words spread far beyond that town. His story reached villages, cities, and even across oceans. He spoke not about money, but about perspective. Not about luck, but about responsibility. He reminded people that circumstances matter, but mindset decides direction. And here is the truth behind this tale. The story of Elias is symbolic. The beggar is none but you, me, and every human being who has ever believed they are limited. The box is your mind, the gold is your potential. Most people sit on it their entire lives. If you change your mindset, your life will change, not because the world suddenly becomes easier, but because you begin to see possibilities where you once saw walls. Stop labeling yourself by your past. Stop assuming the box is empty. Open it. Question your beliefs. Inside your mind lies a treasure far greater than gold.